Hello, gorgeous Camilia. It's such an honor to have you on the Embodied Woman podcast. I am honored you're here. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Anna. It's a pleasure to be here.
I am so excited. I love our journey and our paths crossing through Melanie and the mastermind, the House of Oat. And I would love to hear your story, your journey of your becoming and sharing your journey to becoming the embodied woman that you are today.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm on that journey. I think it's a humbling journey that really grateful feels the deeper in it I'm in. There's no end in sight. And while I feel there's definitely thresholds of identity and faith that I can look back and feel I've crossed, and really when I'm centered, it feels there's no matter what happens externally on the physical plane, no one and nothing can take those things away from me. They're kind of built. It's like a level of awake of awareness that's just there, which feels really safe and resourcing. And I know, as women, as humans, safety is an important resource for us to have.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, where would you like to go? There's so many things I could share, but really the things that the thing that I felt most compelled to say is I'm not done. I don't think we ever.
Ever. No, and that's the journey of becoming. It's constant transformation, constant evolution. And I love that you own that because I think so many of us on our becoming journey can get caught up in the destination and feel like it's here or it's not. And it's the journey to here, to there, that is creating who you become.
Yeah, the way some of the traditions I follow spiritually, we speak of it as being here and there at the same time.
Right.
And for as much that's why I love the name of your podcast, because it is about embodiment. It's not, spirituality isn't about being on anybody's high horse and having any kind of judgment about there being a right way or a labeled way or even a dual good and bad way of doing anything. It's really about being here whilst also not being attached to or trapped in our human experience as it's unfolding. So yeah, that brings me a lot of peace actually, to to remember that when things get dramatic, um you know, in life.
Well, that's so beautiful. I mean, like, you can't fully get there without being fully here. Even the word there contains here. And so when you're fully here now, you'll be fully present when you get there. And the there always extends and expands beyond. So tell us more about your journey, your origin story, and what inspired you on the path that you're currently on, who you've become, and what you're creating now.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Morocco, and I there was a level of privilege, I would say, to my upbringing, and also of scarcity too. It was a real balance of I'm grateful of the two extremes because it helped me learn a lot. Privilege from a systemic context, because in Morocco, there's just so much poverty, and I wasn't born on that side of the world. And at the same time, my family's been through hardship. There's a lot of transgenerational gifts and trauma that have been, passed down, and all the normal things you might expect and more. Like I have faced some trials and tribulations, I would say, um, as a teen, but nothing. I always saw those things as things that made me stronger. And then I moved to London. I lived in the UK for about 11 years. And that was interesting because I was very much on a conventional ego path. So I valued academia. And there was a the destination there wasn't here or there. The destination was the top, right? Like the educated, the wealthy. And I always loved learning. Like there was a piece that was really pure in my seeking to deepen my knowledge of life and others. But I really very quickly saw the fragility of the systems I was a part of, whether they were, religious in Morocco, whether they were academic when I was a student, whether they became, corporate when I became, employed. Entrepreneurship wasn't structurally available to me immediately because I needed to get a British passport. So I had to earn a very high level of salary in order to stay from an immigration perspective. And I didn't realize just how much the hard constraints in our life actually influence where we're able to play. And I don't think I gave myself enough credit for how much I challenged everything inside those constraints. It's like I deluded myself that I was not influenced by them, but I still very much was an entrepreneur within Deloitte, very much challenged the status quo and didn't take any rules at face value. And it's funny because I've always been passionate about really consciousness and in all its forms at the different levels of awareness that I've been on. But what I what I remember from that time in this moment speaking to you is I took so much pride. It's like I was wearing my black sheep status as a badge of honor. I'm different. I'm not conditioned like these other people. Like there was so much judgment. Like I felt superior in some ways. And it's because I felt really fragile in my sense of difference that I really had to like prove it and push it onto the world in order to trust in it within myself. And that was so interesting because I've since been on a journey of awakening, like pretty like head first, and I was coaching execs and pretty senior folks at Deloitte, and it was like in a team way. And then the more I was walking my own talk and going on my own path, the more I realized this is a game of individual consciousness. Like if I can like let me stop trying to save and change the world. Let me just save and change and enlighten myself. And everything else will be a byproduct of that. And so I started working at being much more interested on the invisible, energetic, internal ways of creating generative change, because I just felt that was the ceiling of any big thing. And as I started to do that deeply, I began to just unravel my own conditioning and my own humanity. And years, like almost 10 years on the path of conscious peeling of the layers, it took so many years for me to see, oh my gosh, like even that, me being a black sheep, me disrupting, me challenging and being free, that in itself was still me being trapped and run by my own programming and my own conditioning in its own flavor. And it was so humbling to see this so clearly because I was so convinced that it was different. And yeah, I guess where I'll stop talking is by just ending and saying that this work is so important. Like I'm the biggest skeptic, like really, like I have such a scientist mind and cognitive mind. And, I've been battling like and letting go of trying to understand everything because there's no need to. And it's really so phenomenal to really see that if we don't put in the energy to understand ourselves and our truth in a much bigger context and become a genuine creator and agent of our life, then that energy, more of that energy than we can even fathom, is being spent, dispersed, and we're being run by those programs. So it's almost like it's not like, oh, do you want to do this work? It's kind of hard and not for everybody. It's like, if you don't, like, can you afford not to? Because the price you're paying unconsciously by not is, personally, I feel, far too high. Yeah.
So powerful and so true. Yes, absolutely. And thank you for sharing all of that. I can relate to so many aspects of that. And I feel like so many of us do because that's the culture, the narrative that we're born into, and the conditioning and the unlayering of all of that. And I think you took that leap to assume responsibility and be the creator for your life. And in that first step, did you experience some of the victim and that sense of heaviness, realizing that you had unconsciously been creating in a way that maybe didn't feel aligned?
Totally. Totally. It's a death by a thousand cuts until that whole identity dies completely, gets reintegrated, and it's on to the next one. And the second you think you're done, the next level opens up. And that applies from all the things, from, I remember the very, very beginning of my journey, the way this shadow work presented itself was in really subtle forms, like how much I cared about my physical appearance, and my relationship with my mother, my struggle with the feminine and my own gender, like this desire to be intimate, but this inability to let go of control. Like, so it's just very, I think, common universal things. And like the more time goes on, the deeper we go. And it's things that are like much more built in, like the blind spots don't stop, like I often play whack-a-mole with my blind spots. Like recently I really got a new, like, so it felt like we were going fishing and found a new net of just how much in particular contexts, particularly involving the masculine, I was still performing for love and still attaching my worth to my achievements in some way, even though there was a no way that that wasn't the case. I was still in subtle ways not embodying that, to use your word. And it's just continuous and really so beautiful and so freeing to be on this path.
And embodying all of it, knowing that you are both the masculine, the feminine, and those energies, and you are the woman, the one who receives, and you can still have that incredible power. And feminine power is sometimes soft and sometimes strong, and it's all of it. And knowing what is from the past, like protective mechanisms for control, for that need for safety, that certainty. Yet the unknown is that feminine energy of trust, surrender, feeling held and supported by the universe, by the divine, whatever it is for you. And so, what has been your biggest lesson, your greatest wisdom with embodying more of that feminine energy, surrendering more into trust?
Oh, yeah, I feel that the last time I really received deep insight on this was, I love, my human identity loves to hedge,
Mm.
you know, loves to hedge. I'm so all in, so devoted, so passionate. This is just, if this goes wrong, don't want to put all my eggs here, you know? Like, what if something out of nowhere happens? And so there's still this um inbuilt um programmed reluctance to fully hand myself over
Mm.
um to this power that's much greater than me. And it's almost like I do it by um creating safety nets almost, right? and and the insight I got is, like, trust isn't trust 70%. It's not trust 88%. It's not even trust 98%. It's 100%
Mm.
unwavering conviction. And that level of devotion, like, I think it applies to every area of my life, really. When we show up that way, we're not coming from the same energy. Um, If you knew your success was absolutely inevitable, who would you be? You know, instead of trying to create it. Like the whole trying creates distance. Or even like, this fear I think I shared in the mastermind, like I hired a recent employee and I'm paying him $10,000 a month. Um, which it's interesting because I pay my mentors way more than that. So I've invested in energetics and in mentorship at a much higher financial level than this. But somehow when it comes to operations, when it comes to like business or employment, I, that's by far the biggest investment I've ever made in my business. And it was confronting because also it wasn't like a one-off shot. Okay, here's this 50 grand for the year. It's like 10K a month. Like every month it's like an additional significant expense that comes out. And it allowed me, making that decision allowed me to really sit with some much deeper fears around attachment, because it's so easy to be all in when we got nothing to lose. We're just playing to win, right? Like we're at the bottom. But when we've built something, like I'm attached to this home, my human has created a, after being nomadic for 2.5 years, after being in all sorts of toxic, non high frequency environments, having a physical space that just lifts me up on the land that I feel so connected to, feels important to my human, to all of me, really. And so I don't want to lose that. I don't want to, like there's all these attachments, and I had to really sit with, I don't need these things. Like I have a 200 kilogram amethyst wing rock that I ordered from Brazil that's currently stuck in the border. And like literally I was thinking like, but if I have to leave, what would I do with my stone? It's like so ridiculous. Like the level of thoughts, it's like, no, like that's not my plan, and it's like, yes, my preference would be not to lose these things. And if I were to, I know I'd be okay. Right. And so really continuously developing this like light hand of, I'm not gripping this. I'm aware of when my attachments start to get in the way of me completely exposing myself and showing up in full devotion to my mission. And those subtleties, I think, is where it's at, because the difference between 99% trust and 100% trust is significant. And so that's how I approach it. Like currently, like I'm not even trying to create big radical changes in my life. I'm really focused on the grunt work. It's like the 1% improvement, the catching the tiny subtle thing that I didn't see yesterday. Like last night I got a message at like 11:30 p.m., someone who really needed me, who was like, I'm in pain. I know I don't deserve it. Like I'm like, I need your help. So I called them. We spent 2.5 hours on the phone. I didn't get to bed until 2 a.m. I'm like usually in bed by 10. And so this morning, I slept in. I went for a swim. So my hair's wet for this podcast, and I'm just really attending to what's in front of me, and in trust that what's supposed to happen is going to happen, and it's all making sense on a much greater plane than I can intellectually grasp.
Yeah, the human mind wants to come in and cognitively analyze everything and make sense of everything and create meaning and the black and white analysis. But it's more that energetic, how does it feel? What's aligning now? What's presenting now and meeting the moment? And that's the feminine. The more you connect to that essence, the more you connect to your body, which is the source of your power, the source of your intuition, your wisdom, the more you're guided. But when we're so disconnected from that element, that essence within us, and we're in the mind and analysis, it's like, well, what is true? And we're forcing and we're hustling and we're doing more. And why isn't it working? But it's like that element of trust, because when we trust completely, it's like, I just know. I know because I know. And it's like Jacqueline Shaw speaks about, having that conviction and that certainty in your success being inevitable and going all in. What does it look like to go all in? Maybe not even what it looks like. What does it feel like? Because it's such an energetic commitment, it's devotion. And feeling that, it sends that signal to the universe. But the universe knows when we're not fully committed, when we're not all in. And that'll be reflected back. But it's like, well, the masculine wants to have a plan B. Well, with the feminine, it's all in. There is no plan B. We go. And when you fly off the cliff without having built the plane, you build the plane as you go down, right? And so having that trust, how has your relationship to yourself changed? How has your relationship to trust been?
There's so much more space and ease, like I mentioned it in my origin story, but control was really what I thought I had to do to keep myself safe in so many ways. And the more I've softened into my heart and my womb, and I love your reminder of it's our body. Our body knows the way, like it holds all the codes. Our bodies are like infinite perceivers. And if we can just fully come back to them and be inside them, we don't need anything outside of that to know who to be, how to be. Like it's all here. And just that knowing, like the amount, I feel like the greatest shift has been in the absence of things that were previously really polluting me,
Mm,
like the absence of overthinking, the absence of incessant doubt and questioning. It's not that I never doubt, but it's just there's this, when I was talking about thresholds at the beginning, I know that this is the truth. And I've built discernment to sense that and trust in my sensing more than in my thinking. But for a while, that was me really fighting against the way I'd been brought up, fighting against the
mm,
society that, conditioned to live in, that, we need to achieve, we need more, we need
mm.
to, as women, the beauty industry is fucking, like just everything is there to tell us that we need things outside ourselves. And so it felt like there was a lot of internal struggle for a while. And I remember like the lifting of that because and it's layers and layers and layers, right? But it's just such a much more joyful way of living and being. And like there's a like background hum of peace that I feel I carry in the
Mm,
background of my days, no matter what shit hits the fan.
mm.
Like I have access to just peace, and silence. And I can just choose to tune into that. And it's countless. We could talk for hours about what that the irony is that just helps our performance so much. That helps our decision making, that helps our intuition, our speed, the way in which we move, the the fearlessness, the fierceness, the unconditional love, the ability to be genuine truth soldiers and reflectors of truth for ourselves and others just gets bigger and bigger and bigger the more we lean into this.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said something so powerful with, it's not just the thinking, it's the sensing. And someone asked me this morning, actually, if you're not seeing, because sometimes I associate seeing with thinking. It's like we need the evidence to see something to then think it's possible instead of knowing that like the vision and the desire is the evidence and we are the ones to create it. And the evidence comes from us taking that aligned action. And it's the feeling that guides that then leads to the seeing. And she asked me, if you're not seeing, what other sense would you be? And I was like, felt. If we're not seeing, we're felt. And that's what we are. Before anyone ever sees us, they feel us in the energetic field, in the quantum. We are felt first.
Mm.
99% of what we think, feel, experience isn't even ours. So all of the doubt, all of the analysis, the fear, all of that that you were speaking about wasn't even yours. And so much of that is like the conditioning and those suggestions. But because they're in our own voice, we don't question it. We don't even say, oh, is this true? Is this even mine? Because it sounds like us and that's what we've identified. And then when the absence of the analysis and the doubt arose, it was like you had that contrast to see what life was like. But so many of us haven't even had that contrast yet. We've just known our lives, known ourselves up until this point based on what was and has been. And now what? Like, who are we in the absence of that which we thought mattered? Pursuing the unconventional, letting go of the
I mean,
conventional way.
that's a really cool question for the audience to contemplate, which is who are we in the absence of doubt? You
Yeah.
know, a lot of people hire me to find that out in practice. And there's there's something about this felt sense like I'm guilty of this, you know, where it's so human to let our minds, let the ego want to analyze, understand,
Yeah.
label. Second, like the neuroscientists have shown, like the second we turn that part of our brains on, we create distance with
Mm.
the felt sense of experience. And so, like, so much of what we can do is when we're experiencing a breakthrough or moving energy or something is happening and there is an internal knowing in the form of sensation and energy or emotion that we can't quite pinpoint verbally before jumping to translating it or understanding it. If we can just be with that and
Mm.
allow that to really express itself, because the second we jump to the mind, we almost like dim the breakthrough itself, and the body learns that way. You know, our nervous systems transform that way. That's how we expand our capacities to receive and create. That's how we hold more and more uncertainty safely. And it's like if we're so quick to hijack that, then we're actually limiting the most valuable part of the transmission that's coming through. So I think really developing that muscle to be in that tension and tolerate not knowing a little bit more than we're used to, can really do wonders for the trajectory that our life takes.
I couldn't agree more. And I feel like it's in that absence of knowing where the unknown, when we're in the unknown, and maybe the fear arises because we're on that growth edge and we're in our growth zone, out of the comfort zone. One of my mentors from early on always said that comfort is just predictable discomfort. And I thought that's so interesting because so many people have been so conditioned to stay within their comfort zone and not to stray. But it's when we stray from that comfort zone that we discover who we are and who we're meant to be. And
Mm.
stepping into the unknown and walking with fear. I don't know if you're familiar with your human design and motivation in your, if you're familiar with your motivation in human design, but there are these six motivations: innocence, guilt, fear, etc. And mine is fear. And so for me, I always thought fear was a bad sign, or it was a sign I was off path and a fear to stop, like a sign to stop, rather than a sign that I'm on path and to continue forward, knowing that fear is the gateway to our greatest gifts, to everything we desire. And so when you're stepping into the unknown, and it's like you ask the question, who are you in the absence of doubt? You have that full conviction, that knowing in who you are, and it's body based. It's in your body. But how do we know that if we're not living embodied and empowered? Because the body holds all the codes. It's our greatest technology. And yet,
And yet we're interested in chat gpt.
I know, ChatGPT, tell me about my life. Tell me what I should do. What do I need to know? And I think that's been one of my greatest lessons, and maybe one of yours too, is like seeking the answers externally and seeking the mentors to tell me what to do and all of these things. And then remembering that it's me and all of these other people's are people are simply mirrors, right? Helping us to remember who we are,
Mm.
to awaken. us to our true divine wisdom, to our true divine essence. And so you mentioned earlier that you were a skeptic and very much steeped in the science and academia, which I was too, and did not identify with my spiritual part. Like I had that whole reckoning, I call it. And I would love to hear your own process of experiencing energy and then coming to believe and truly embrace and embody this other way while having that science and spiritual intermingling, because I don't see them as separate. I don't see it as one or the other, which I did before. I feel like they complement each other. What one can explain, the other cannot, and vice versa. And so they harmonize in such a beautiful way when we intentionally integrate them.
I love this question. Yeah, I was afraid to believe in something I couldn't perceive or something I didn't think I could perceive. And that's why I would like have classified as an atheist or, or agnostic or whatever, because it's like that just, and in many ways, religion felt to the younger version of myself as a social construct to control and influence at mass level in ways that didn't resonate because I didn't see integrity and coherence in the the sayings and the embodiment of the people who, in most of the people who had identified with those faiths. And where a really big doorway opened for me is when I first started doing the shadow work. Of course, I first started to meditate. Maybe this was like 8 or so years ago. And I was living in London and I started volunteering at this Buddhist center. And it's where I would meditate in groups and whatever. And I learned a little bit about Buddhism just from exposure, from being there. And there's one thing about the way Buddhism positions itself that really drew me in. And they had these rules that I was just like, I don't want to be vegan or, whatever other resistance I remember came through. But they weren't prescriptive rules. They were like guidelines. They were like principles. They were values, like karma was one of them, or non-harm. Ahimsa is like a yogic term that like it's not harming ourselves or others, like a state of non-violence. And so there's just like these different ways of being, and they were presented to you in a take it or leave it. We don't really care whether or not you subscribe to it or do it. You don't have to do it to kind of win access to the exclusive tribe of Buddhism, but take it away, test it out, make your own mind up. And that was the first time that felt so safe to me because there's always been this inner knowing. It came out in different forms that I would be able to feel and sense the truth for me. And I get to
Mm.
trust in my own knowing. And anything and anyone that wants to take me away from that is not it, right? Like we are divine. Yes, I'm a believer now, I'm a believer in myself, where it starts, a believer that when I'm connected to us, like there's just something immense. And it's when I separate myself that the world would close down and possibilities would close down. And so that's really how I coach. It feels like giving people the keys to their own Ferraris. Like they've been driving a Air One for like 30 years. And it's like you're an Aston Martin and you don't know how to use your engine, but here are the keys. Go and play, like go and figure, like it's an accompaniment, it's an empowerment. Like a lot of the undoing of external validation is like, well, why would you hire somebody for that? And it's like, it's a different way of relating to it. And so, yeah, for me, like I very quickly dropped out and lost interest
Mm.
with the intellectual stimulating. Like I love to read, but really even reading, I read mostly spiritual books that help me remember because I feel things and they just get anchored. So I just really dropped into field knowledge, and I love to learn by doing. I'm a 6 line in human design.
Me
So
too.
there's just a lot of like, I'm so uninterested in the, I'm much less interested. So for me, the theory of things is second order to the experiencing of things. And I know that the codes that I gain from the experiencing of things, like they fuel my cells, they fuel my body, and then I have access to that when I need it. And so the compounding actually happens pretty intuitively from living my life and being alive and pursuing the things that light me up, and my energy, fancies, and trusting in that. And with a vigilance, of course, like, there's a big difference between indulgence and yeah, like loving ourselves and ease and pleasure. And I stay vigilant between where I'm coming from, energetically.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. You said so many things that I found so profound and insightful, especially like your when you were speaking about your ability to perceive and feeling like I don't believe, but it's like remembering and recognizing that you are the divine and it's about believing in you. And when you are connected to you and you believe in you, it opens up the field. Anything is possible. And it's so interesting that we are the ones that create that separation. We are the ones that create that limitation. And you are here to give people the keys to their own Ferrari. But it's interesting to me, something I've contemplated recently is how our limitations or the perceived limitations actually are the keys to our liberation. And so when you're supporting someone and coaching someone, you offer this mirror, this reflection to help them see that which they did not see before or perceive in a way. And you give them the keys or help them remember the keys to their own liberation. And so there's just so much there where it's like we are all here on this path, on our becoming journey, helping one another. In my remembering, I help you remember. And in your remembering, you help me remember. And so
Yeah.
it truly is this journey we're walking together.
That's why I love the masterminds so much.
Yeah.
That's why I surround myself, my clients, like, I think this is a game, like the human game is a game of remembering. That's the whole
Yes.
nature of
Yeah.
consciousness. And I love what you're saying. Like there's two huge things in what you're saying. The first is like, we are so quick to forget our own knowing.
Mm.
People can feel things with their hearts
Yeah.
that touches them, and they may not understand them with their minds, but they're still touched and they have a knowing of that. But we're so quick to then slip back into unawareness and habitual doing. And in the last 24 hours, like, I support powerful women, I support powerful men. Some of the most, like, I can't tell you, these people have built empires, these people have been doing deep work on themselves, these people have like a hotline to the divine, they have access to themselves, like very powerful humans,
Yeah.
and on a mission in this world, on their path, and both forgot their power because both got handed some pretty tough external circumstances where it was just like this process of disillusion with everything they've built just got taken away because they build and they're building connected, and then they forget that the point of their building is their becoming, and they get too attached to what they're building and it starts to go downhill, and then they lose it, and then it's like shit, like, as they're both men in this case, and it's like, as men, like, we have been conditioned to only feel valuable when we're useful, when we provide value to others. And so then it's like all these projections, and I think this applies to women too, but we kind of disconnect from our knowing, and we end up having like all these voices in our heads that you said weren't even ours, that we believe is true. And because we want to believe is true, because we're so addicted to that familiar feeling of pain and smallness, right? We isolate ourselves from our truth soldiers, right? We just end up spending a few days in the house and reach for the alcohol or whatever ways people numb themselves. And really, really start to just close. Like our soul will like, we feel like we're going to die. We believe it's the end of the world. And what you said is like, I have a principle, like I call this, it comes from Stephen Gilligan's trance work, but it's like utilization. And
Mm,
utilization, what you said around the obstacle is the way, like the
yes.
goal is in welcoming the resistance. When that shit comes up, it's because we're being handed a code to ascend to an even better level,
Yeah.
greater place, integrate something that's been still on the sidelines, and we're finally ready for that. And I think if we just, again, back to trust, adopt that frame of, okay, this is hard. I don't want this. If we lean into it without trying to fix it, trying to make it go away, and just observe it and make space for the
Mm.
wisdom to come through, it'll be a smoother process. We won't have to go through losing, hey, baby, we won't have to go through losing all of the external things. I think we make our lives so much harder than they need to be in the way we resist.
It's the resistance, like Byron Katie says, the suffering comes from our resistance to what is happening. When you love, or you don't even have to love what is, but you can accept what is. And, it's so interesting in hearing you speak about those two gentlemen. And my feeling for people when they come to me and they're experiencing something like that in their life, I have no fear. And I understand what Melanie says. I have no fear for you. I feel excited because fear and excitement carry the same frequency, only fear is excitement without breath. And so when I have this sense, I was like, it's their liberation. It's the thing that they're fearing so much, but it's like literally sending them to a whole new level. And it's this blossoming, but in that moment, it can feel like this disillusion, this crumbling, this failure, when it's really this catalyst for their becoming.
The quantum breakdowns that precede the quantum leaps.
Yes.
And I can't help but think when you say that, like how much of you being fearless in the face of deep, messy transformation that looks bad from a human lens, and there's a knowing from a spiritual truth lens that it's good, but we're too trapped in the human to be able to be fearless while we're going through it in the way you're explaining it. I wonder how much that you're able to have that calibration because of what you said around understanding your own human design and your own motivation around fear, and how that used to actually scare you, but now you've again crossed a threshold with that. You just recognize it instantly as being a catalyst for growth.
Completely. Yes. Yeah. Everything is here to serve and evolve us. And it's like your body is the foundation. You cannot do much without your body being on board with your nervous system regulation, but your body being the source of your power, but also the foundation for radiant health. And for so much of my life, I've been building me. I am the foundation for my business. And your business, your life can outgrow your body. So sometimes these experiences come when the body is asking us to wake up, to become more aware and connected, so that when we connect not just to our body, but to our power, so that we can lead and rise in an entirely new way. It's like the dissolution of the old way to remember a new way. It's not about
I like
fixing. Yeah. Yeah.
remembering. It's about
Remembering.
remembering,
It's
not
about
fixing.
remembering. And it's not even about discovering, like personal discovery, self discovery, all of this. It's like seeking and feeling like there's something outside of me, but it's this remembering. And that's what we serve to do, is help each other remember and see who we are, because our self concept, our self belief in those moments of challenge and struggle can feel shaky, but it's also like this new level of strength and stability.
Really cool and precise nuance you bring, because we're both activators in some senses professionally, but like your point around, it's not even about discovery. so much of the coaching industry is about that, is about improvement and discovery. And actually, that's the personal development game. But we're saying, I think in this conversation, there's something deeper, much more valuable, much more rewarding, much more expansive, much more true than personal development. We don't need to actually develop ourselves. We need to come home to ourselves. And that's the energetics of
Mhm.
it. Like the energetics are way more powerful in that they're the layer underneath. And it's not to say that personal development isn't fantastic when you've never worked on yourself, like it will support, like if you're stuck in some kind of victim circumstantial outlook on life, learning to think positive will help you, it is a step up. But like thinking positive isn't what it's about. Like going into the fire and being able to stay conscious as you're unraveling is what it's about. And there's just levels of this stuff, and that's why I like have come to terms.
Mhm.
Told me even a few years ago that I would be selling energy. Like, what the fuck are you on? Like, this is insane. I don't like this woo crap. Like, what? And it's like, no, this is actually the most precise, the most grounded, the most sense I've made in my entire life, the most sober and alert that I've been. And magic, of course, the magic piece is not negligible. But it took me a minute and a half to own that. I'm so fucking grateful.
Yeah.
Mm.
Oh my gosh, me too. I know. I was on the path to become a medical doctor. I was not one to believe in the spirituality and the religion. I was like, nope, science is the only way. And it brings this point up of like, we are so busy seeking the one right way that we forget that our way is the way. And
Mm.
in personal development, it's seeing yourself for the human that you are, the wholeness, the worthiness that you inherently exude, and remembering that instead of feeling like, oh, I'm broken, I have to go and fix myself, because this is a flaw within the personal development industry, selling us a remedy to the brokenness, thinking that we need to fix ourselves to improve ourselves rather than to reclaim and remember ourselves.
Mm.
Yeah, such a powerful path. I would love to hear any words of wisdom to leave the listeners with today? Anything that comes to mind, to heart, as they are navigating their own embodiment and empowerment journey?
Yeah, like the thing you're scared of the most, that's your clue. Like that's where it's at. And I would say, like, I would say two things. I would say, first of all, like, especially like with high performers, I mostly work with high performers, we punish ourselves two ways. We punish ourselves by doing the thing that keeps us out of our power. And then we double bind punish ourselves by punishing ourselves for taking us out. And if we can get rid of the second, that creates spaciousness to start to get to know the first, right? If we're just so harsh with ourselves, like the level of self brutality on the inside makes it so challenging to take steps in the direction that we want. And if we can start to disentangle those energies and watch those voices that aren't even ours, like, who do you think you are? And it's not going to work. And just that smallness, that harshness, and recognize it for being untrue, and training our puppy mind to stay in the passenger seat instead of the driver's seat and then just really become best friend with your resistance. Like become best friend with your fear, become befriend the thing that you're running away from, with your avoidance, with your fear of conflict, with your inability to express yourself, with your fear of intimacy and inability to go vulnerable. Like just really um don't try and fix, don't try and get rid, don't try and improve and do something else. Just watch yourself do it. Watch yourself be it. Like develop a relationship with that and see what happens when you learn to just bring presence to those parts of you.
I love that so much because the resistance is what compounds that feeling anyway. And in War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, he speaks about resistance. The more resistance you have towards something, the more important it is for your soul and personal evolution. So, that which you are feeling resistance to, that is the gold. And that is what you and I have been learning too, is to lean into the fear, lean into the resistance. And I say, wherever there's resistance, there I go, because I know
Mm.
that's where the gold is.
Mm.
So,
I
yes, thank you. It's been such an honor. I would love to hear how listeners can connect with you to learn more about what you do. Where is the best place they can find you?
I'm most active on LinkedIn. So if you want to just hear from, we post there every day. I'm in that inbox. So if you have any questions or reflections, and then we have a pretty cool newsletter where we go in more depth with people who are on this journey. So yeah, just come and join the club and yeah, be a part of this ride. We're so much more powerful together.
Absolutely. It's like together we heal, together we grow, together we rise, together we remember. It's the power of we, because we are all fractals of the divine. And when we come together, we create this beautiful mosaic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love I do podcasts like as a hobby, but I often like will get like strangers who will just listen to episodes and then message us a little breakthrough or something that resonated, and that always means so much. Like sometimes I think people don't reach out because they feel like they're inconveniencing us or it's too small, but like that stuff makes my heart smile. So yeah, like let me and Anna know like if anything we spoke to resonates, if you hate something we said, if you love something we said, if you're trying something we said, like let us know.
Yeah, let us know. And please share this with someone, a friend, someone you're knowing is leading you to share it with. Like, just like, share, subscribe. I don't ever say this at the end, but it's so powerful. Like, share it, listen to it, share your breakthroughs with us, because when you share it, we can amplify that for you and hold the vision with you.
Well, I'm so glad you just invited people to repost and share because we honestly underestimate, like Melanie speaks of the power of one,
Yeah.
but like hearing the right thing at the right moment can literally create ripples that would humble and us some of us to our knees. So
Mm.
just part of being in our bodies and listening to our intuitions, I often do things that I don't think make any sense. And it's like, why am I doing this weird thing of sharing this thing with this person? They haven't asked me for anything, or like just, these impulses of this person needs to see this, or I'm going to say this. And sometimes it doesn't even happen immediately, but like years later, one time I had a woman 5 years later tell me this conversation changed my life. And I was afraid, and it took me 4 years to do something with it. And I was just like, wow, I thought I created damage. And I thought that you would never, and it's like we're constantly planting seeds, we're constantly planting seeds. So yeah, plant a
Yes.
seed with a friend.
Exactly. I love that. And when you said like the right thing at the right time, when you hear that, it literally changes your life. My whole body was full of goosebumps. I feel that so deeply because the right thing said at the right time has changed my life, has changed my trajectory more times than I can count.
Yes. And it only takes a handful of doors for you to walk through that will lead you to the most extraordinary life.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3 moments where you say yes to this spirit inside, this energy inside, and it will just completely blow you away. Like it's not that many. So
No,
those
no. And like something that just sparked as you were saying that is say yes. Say yes to yourself. Say yes to your life. Say yes to your desires. Because so often we've been conditioned to say no, and no closes the door to possibility, potentiality, opportunity, to our soul, to our divine essence being shown through. And so when you say yes, yes to life, like I say yes, how can you say yes more today? And look at what transpires for you, because that is the frequency, and words are codes and they activate us and they turn on our own remembrance. So maybe there's something in here that you're like, I don't really understand that yet. Or there's something that's like, yeah, it hit, but I don't it'll land when it's ready. And know that these were just codes, these little seeds, these words were planted for you to remember and embody who you are. Mhm. Thank you so much for joining me, gorgeous. It's been an honor and a pleasure to speak with you today. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with the audience. Thank you for sharing your light, your magic, your energy with the world, and for leading in the way that you do.
Thank you so much for this conversation.
It's my
I
pleasure.
feel like I'm vibrating.
Yes, me too. The ripples is rippling out. Have a beautiful day, and I'll see you so soon.